The following film is intended for mature audiences and contains adult content, graphic language, graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. We'll leave it up to you.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? What's going on? Y'all, I decided to give us a little break so we catch up on some real life stuff. So for today, if you're new, make sure you smash that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe with post notifications turned on. And let's get into some prison talk, okay? This first video I have is inside the world's most luxurious prison. Now, we all know prisons are not luxurious, but this has got some luxurious prisons and some top-notch things that give them extra comfort. So without further ado, let's get into it. Luxurious enough, I still don't want to go.
When you do something wrong, you might end up in prison. For some people, that is the worst thing that could happen. For others, it can be a bit of a holiday. Your prison experience can actually depend on where you live. From a jail that's hardly like a prison at all, to one that houses the most dangerous people, here are 20 of the most unusual prisons in the world. Number 20. Het Arresthuis in Roermond, Limburg, Netherlands. Fancy a stay inside the world's most luxurious prison? There's one in Limburg, the Netherlands, where you don't even need to commit a crime to stay there. In fact, you actually have to pay to spend the night. And that's because Het Arresthuis in Roermond, Limburg is actually no longer a prison. It's a luxury hotel that has retained some of its prison-like features. Het Arresthuis was a maximum security prison that opened its doors to the most hardened criminals in 1863. It closed its doors 2 centuries later and lay abandoned until it reopened as a temporary drug trafficker accommodation in 2002. By 2007, it was no longer needed, and construction of a whole different kind began in the building. The once scary-looking prison was transformed into a luxury hotel. And while it's definitely luxurious, the hotel's designers worked hard to ensure it still had those prison vibes. The 105 cells became 38 rooms and 4 luxury suites called the judge, the jailer, the lawyer, and the director. They provide guests with a comfortable sleeping environment, but there are still telltale signs that they were once prison cells, like the brick ceilings and hallway overlooking the center of the hotel. The courtyard has also been given a new lease on life, with olive trees, a botanical garden, and umbrellas to relax under. Before we go on,
I'm not sure if I want to stay in something that used to be a prison or eat at one. I don't know if I'm going to pay for that. I don't care how luxurious it is now. That's on period.
like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
Y'all heard the man, right? Smash that like button.
Number 19. Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center. Cebu Provincial Detention and Rehabilitation Center, or CPDRC, is a Cebu Province, Philippines maximum security jail facility housing up to 1,600 inmates at a time. While it's typically just like any other prison facility of its kind, there's actually something quite special about this one: the dancing inmates. Well, that's right. When prisoners exercise daily, they can participate in choreographed dance routines, which have been a massive hit with prisoners and the general public alike. Some prisoners have even been fortunate enough to perform in public, and there are videos of CPDRC dancers all over YouTube and other video platforms. Cebu Government Security Advisor Byron Garcia wanted to introduce a program at the facility for prisoners to exercise for an hour daily, and he was inspired while watching The Shawshank Redemption in the scene where a song by Mozart is played in the prison yard. Initially, Byron implemented an exercise program for prisoners to march, but soon branched out to pop music dances with songs like Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd and YMCA by the Village People. Now, the prison has choreographer teachers, and prisoners have learned dances to some popular songs like Party Rock Anthem by LMFAO, Gangnam Style by Psy, and Pump It by the Black Eyed Peas. Number 8.
Okay. So this defeats the purpose. This defeats the purpose of going to prison. People go to prison now hoping to get like a dancing deal. Okay, get notified. To me, this is another way for the corrections department to make income because they're posting on social media, right? So they're capitalizing off these inmates. Good Lord, they always make a quick buck. Okay, let's keep going.
18. San Pedro Prison. When you imagine a prison, you picture a government-run facility with guards, structure, and prisoners having their every move dictated. But that's not the case at San Pedro Prison in La Paz, Bolivia. This prison pretty much has no guards, and the prisoners run the whole show. It's like an entire community run by prisoners who can live with their families while inside. From the outside, the prison looks like any ordinary building. The only real telltale sign that it's not is the police officers standing outside in green uniforms. Once inside the heavy iron gates, you gain a glimpse into how different this prison really is. There are no guards in sight, but there are plenty of churches, market stalls, restaurants, classrooms, gyms, and even small businesses. You'll even find a football field and childcare center. It's more like a city than a prison, with the prisoners having developed an independent community with a political system, punishments, and an economy. When new inmates are brought into the prison, they have to buy their own cell and are given a key, a sale purchase agreement, and a property title deed. Some of the wealthiest prisoners have luxury apartment-type cells with ensuite bathrooms, carpets, and furniture, and these can sell for as much as $30,000. Sometimes these prisoners are even able to build their own. If you can't afford to buy or build your own cell, you can rent one, and wealthy inmates often buy multiple cells as investment properties. For a while, prisoners even held tours, and you could pay to stay at the prison if you wished. If this isn't the strangest prison you've ever heard of, I don't know what is.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. This prison is run by the inmates. So that means you are at the mercy of inmates. Girl, they buy a prison cell more. Because these prisoners don't care. Look, in Mexico, they do not care. They is bound to go to prison because they know they can live their best life. And bring your kids. Why would you want to bring your family through to your punishment? Oh, so because you fucked up, the rest of the family gotta come with you. No, sir.
Number 17.
No, sir.
Justice Center, Leoben. Many people believe that if you're sent to prison, you should have the same rights and respect as any other person. And if you're of that belief, you'll love the Justice Center Leoben in Austria. This court and prison complex in Styria, Austria, was built in 2004 to house up to 205 inmates. You first gain insight into what you can expect from a stay here by the two inscriptions. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and all persons deprived of their liberty shall be treated with humanity and with respect for the inherent dignity of the human person. And so it's probably not all that surprising that it's no Alcatraz look-alike. This prison is essentially a luxury accommodation for inmates, with its concrete and glass building, vibrant green wraparound lawn, natural light throughout, and barred-off balconies for prisoners to enjoy. This prison looks like a luxury hotel, and prisoners can spend their time in comfort and style. That's probably why it's completely full. Why wouldn't you want to stay there? Number 6.
Okay, send me to prison. Send me to prison. If prison's looking like that, that's better than where I live right now. Oh shit, send me to prison. That's a period. You know, what they said make a lot of sense. Treat them with dignity, okay? Not put a gold spoon in their mouth.
16. Bastoy Prison. Many countries use prison as a form of punishment, but Norway is different. They take a proactive approach to reform, which is why the high-security Agder prison for up to 300 people is so unique. It's not a cold, dark, depressing place to be incarcerated in. Instead, inmates are given the opportunity to turn their lives around. This prison is located on the island of Bastoy with 80 buildings, farmland, forest, beaches, and an overall lack of fencing. It has about 100 male inmates, some of which have been jailed for serious offenses like murder, rape, and drugs. Around 70 staff members look after these inmates, but only a handful spend the night. Inmates sleep in wooden cabins with comfortable furnishings and TVs. They spend their days training for new trades, working on the island farm, and utilizing the church and library if they want to. In summer, they can play soccer on the soccer pitch, or they might even decide to go skiing in the winter. There aren't too many rules, but the main ones are that they must work in exchange for a stipend, which they can spend in the prison shop, and they must also check in several times daily. Visitors are welcomed with open arms, too. Loved ones can arrive by ferry from Horton 3 days a week, and some can stay in the visitor apartments. Number
Okay, this idea I like. Okay, I like the system of reform these prisoners, make them put them back into society. Yes, reform. Okay, this is how you reform people. America, take notes. Take notes, America. They doing it over there. That's so smart because not only does it keep them from coming back, but they develop a trade. So when they get out, they don't have to go back into crime or selling, stealing, robbing, killing, whatever they were doing. They got something else to look forward to in life. That's a good idea. Okay, I'm moving to Norway.
Number 15. Aranjuez Prison. Prison is hard for families. Children have to watch as their parents grow up behind bars, and they might rarely get to see them after being placed with other family members or even social services. But the Aranjuez prison in Spain doesn't believe in separating families, at least not right away. This prison has 36 family cells, which are designed for parents to live with their children in a secure setting while learning parenting skills until the child is 3. Once they are 3, they must be placed with relatives or social services. Children living in the prison spend their days like most children do, such as going to nursery school, riding bikes, and playing with toys. They can then spend their evenings sleeping in cribs, falling asleep to Disney characters adorning their walls. No wonder they're often dubbed 5-star cells. Apparently, the cells are designed so that children can bond with their jailed parents until they're starting to be old enough to understand what incarceration is. One inmate, Carmen Garcia, who's in jail for a minimum of 10 years for murdering her boyfriend, met her husband in prison, and they got married behind bars before she had their son, Victor. Carmen said the prison takes good care of them, and having her husband and child with her makes her happy. Number
Okay, I get that because you don't want to separate a child too soon from their mother. You really don't. So I can see them going to prison with their mother, but would that be a whole turnaround? Huh. Some of the most finest men be locked up.
14. HM Prison Addywell. HM Prison Addywell, near Addywell in West Lothian, Scotland, is a prison operated by the private company Sodexo Justice Services, which contracts to Scottish Prison Service. It opened its doors in 2008 with a 700 prisoner capacity and was running at capacity just 2 years later. This prison has had its fair share of ups and downs. For example, in 2009, 20 inmates were involved in an event that saw a prison custody officer needing hospital treatment. A cell was also damaged by fire in that same year. In 2010, a riot took place and 2 prison custody officers were injured. The following year, the chief inspector of prisons expressed concerns about assaults on staff. But that's not to say the prison doesn't try its best for its prisoners. It has an early days center, which is essentially an induction program to help prisoners integrate into a new way of life. They're given information and support to manage their stay and are walked through the processes for things like ordering food, purchasing items from the canteen, and accessing training and education. Once they're through this induction phase, they're paired with trained and vetted existing residents to provide reassurance and guidance. The aim is to make those early days less daunting, which can't be a bad thing. Number
They said they put with trained residents. In other words, you mean other criminals? I know they try to make it sound better, but yeah, they put them with other trained criminals who never system. Okay, that's good though. Kind of like a buddy system.
13. Onomichi Prison. Many countries are grappling with youth crime, with significant numbers of teenagers and young people incarcerated for severe crimes. Japan is facing a different problem altogether. They have such a huge aging population that their prisons resemble retirement homes. In 2015, about 20% of people arrested or interrogated by police for crimes were 65 years or older. Most are sent to prison for petty crimes like theft and shoplifting, and some are worried about leaving once they're inside. The most common reasons for the increase in senior crimes are economic hardship, greed, and an overall aging population. According to Justice Ministry official Shinsuke Nishioka, the work of the prison officers is becoming more like nursing care. The inmates have to use toilets often, and some require assistance with diapers and bathing. Many are also hard of hearing, so they struggle to hear and follow directions. The problem is becoming so severe that extra funding has been provided to hire nursing staff and physical fitness experts to cater to the complex needs of older inmates for half of the 70 prisons in Japan. Life in a Japanese prison is far from easy, with talking being forbidden while they work, bathing being restricted, and having to walk in a single file. Life is incredibly monotonous behind prison bars, but many of the older inmates prefer the predictability of their days while having access to food, shelter, and medical care.
Okay, so these old people are really not criminals. In my opinion, they're probably doing this to like kind of like how you bake rack yourself. They're doing it so they can have a place to stay,
Number 12.
place to stay, a hot meal, care they need. Because that's crazy. I thought China takes care of their people, the elder people. I thought the families took care of them as they got older. I guess not anymore. That used to be a thing in China. Well, why don't they just build an old ass retirement center, a big ass retirement center for all the old folks? Like that would be the next best thing for me. Because prison, these people ain't doing nothing in prison. You need to be in prison. My grandma.
Otago Corrections Facility. The Otago Corrections Facility near Milton in the South Island of New Zealand looks more like an educational facility than a low to high medium security men's prison. It was built in 2007 and has a variety of buildings set within expansive grounds with high security fencing and one entry and exit point. It stands out in the rural scenery, and it's not within walking distance of pretty much anything. And even though going to prison is a form of punishment, this prison offers inmates the chance to improve themselves and make a difference in their lives once their sentences are over. They can train in carpentry, engineering, and hospitality, and even take on jobs while in prison, working in the kitchen, laundry, and grounds. Some prisoners are also allowed to work on engineering and farming jobs, or work with contract work parties to provide services to councils, charities, local governments, and iwi. Currently, this corrections facility has a 454 prisoner capacity, 291 of which are spaces for high-security prisoners. Number 11. Federal Prison Camp in Alderson. Federal Prison Camp Alderson is a minimum security federal prison for females in West Virginia. After a shortage of women's facilities was identified, the prison was built and opened in 1927 and became the first federal women's prison in the U.S. The prison was styled after a boarding school and was initially designed in a horseshoe pattern with cottages. Today, it's a 159-acre facility that offers an abundance of opportunities for women inmates to turn their lives around. There are no barbed wires on the fences, and all prisoners have schedules for work and activities. Inmates even get holidays from work, unless they work in the kitchen or powerhouse. From the beginning, all staff members have emphasized personal growth experiences and vocational training, so inmates can participate in craft shop activities and training. They can also spend their free time walking around and playing volleyball. Most inmates have been convicted of white-collar or non-violent crimes, and they all sleep in bunk beds in 2 dormitories that can hold around 500 inmates each. Each inmate has a 5-by-9-foot cinder block cube set within the dormitories. Some pretty famous names have stayed at this facility over the years, including Martha Stewart, the American jazz singer and songwriter Billie Holiday, and the former Michigan Supreme Court Justice Diane Hathaway, who was convicted of mortgage fraud.
That's what Martha Stewart was when she had her seasons and stuff. Okay, I was wondering what prison she stayed at. That prison looks really nice. They need to look at some of these men prisons because that prison looks really, really nice. That looks more like a college dorm. It does, doesn't it? Makes you want to go take a visit, doesn't it?
Number 10. Sark Prison. Prisons are generally massive structures set within even more extensive grounds, designed to hold hundreds of inmates. But not Sark Prison. This is the world's smallest prison, and it has just 2 windowless cells of 6 feet by 6 feet by 8 feet, and a 3-foot corridor linking the two. Each cell has a wood-slatted bed and a thin mattress. Prisoners can only stay for a maximum of 2 days due to the 16th century rules of the area, and if the crime is severe enough to warrant a more extended stay, they are sent to Channel Island, Guernsey. So where is this prison? Well, it's on an island called Sark, which is nestled between Guernsey and Jersey. The island is just 3 miles long and 1.5 miles wide and is home to about 550 people. Sark has no street lights or even cars, and the only way to get around is on foot, bicycle, tractor, or horse and cart. Even the ambulances and fire engines are pulled by horses or tractors. Probably not surprisingly, Sark Prison isn't often utilized. The last serious crime was committed back in 1990, and since then, only drunk residents or tourists are usually made to spend a night there.
Y'all quit acting up going to these places, getting put in a little jail. That's the world's smallest jail. They don't even have cop cars. They handcuff you and put you on the back of a horse and buggy. That's kind of cute though. I want to go to a place like not the jail, but to the island itself. The island kind of cute. It's like it's stuck in time. Now you know if you go to that jail, you're not escaping off that island. That's a period. You got a boat.
Number 9. Halden Prison. Halden Prison in Halden, Norway houses among the most dangerous prisoners like murderers, rapists, and child molesters. Yet the prison environment is unlike anything you would expect for such dangerous people. This prison, known as the second largest in Norway, heavily emphasizes rehabilitation, and its design allows it to simulate life outside prison walls. Prisoners can play sports, participate in activities, and interact with the unarmed staff as if they were a part of a community. There are also no traditional security measures like a barbed wire, snipers, and towers. Instead, they have concrete and steel walls and safety glass. Prisoners are also treated to quite luxurious cells. All prison cells are about 110 square feet with a TV, fridge, toilet with shower, and vertical windows without bars that let in plenty of natural light. For every 12 cells, there's a kitchen and living room, and all kitchens have silverware, porcelain plates, and a dining table. They also have access to comfortable modular couches and a video game system. The prison, of course, provides food, but prisoners are also welcome to buy ingredients at the internal grocery shop to cook their own meals. While they must spend about 12 hours a day in their cells, they are encouraged to get outside and enjoy the grounds with activities like jogging, football, cooking, woodworking, and musical classes. There's the occasional incident of violence, but disagreements are managed with mediation. Cell confinement or prison transference are presented as options if there are still issues after mediation.
That prison don't sound bad at all. You get your own TV, you get your own shower. What? Oh, there's no rape going on in that prison. Because that's what usually happens in the showers. But anyway, y'all, they get a basketball court, game system, a cafeteria with your own. You cook your own food? Great. Okay.
Number 8. 101. ADX Florence. You hear about some amazing prisons offering the same luxuries that people get on the outside, but ADX Florence, near Florence, Colorado, is basically the complete opposite. It's a supermax or control unit prison on 49 acres of land with varying degrees of security to cater to the wide range of prisoners. Often, these prisoners are considered the most extreme, with high chances of violence towards workers and other inmates. In 2022, there were 344 inmates housed in this facility, and they were confined to single cells made entirely of concrete for 23 hours per day. All cells have a desk, stool, and bed, and most of these are made from poured concrete to limit self-harm. There's also a toilet that shuts off if it's blocked, and a timer-run shower to prevent flooding. The sink doesn't have a tap, just in case it might be used for self-harm. Sometimes they have steel mirrors bolted to the wall and a light that can only be shut off remotely. They have windows, but each cell has just one 4-inch by 4-foot window designed to show the sky and roof so that prisoners don't know their exact location within the facility. As you might imagine, there is not a lot of joy in this prison. In 2012, 11 inmates filed a federal class action lawsuit alleging chronic abuse and failure to diagnose mental illness. At the time they filed the lawsuit, half a dozen inmates had allegedly died by suicide, and another just after the lawsuit was filed. Number 6.
Wow. How do inmates file a lawsuit in prison? I know that you could do it, file reports to certain height, but how do you file a whole lawsuit? Lord, listen, being stuck in your cell for 23 hours a day, that'll make anybody go crazy. Can you imagine? Look at the walls 23 hours a day. No, sir, I'm not going to that prison. Cool.
7. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. The Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary used to be a maximum security prison on Alcatraz Island off the coast of California in San Francisco Bay. In 1861, it was designed as a naval defense fortification for military offenders and eventually became the Pacific branch of the United States military prison in 1907. The Army transferred ownership to the Civilian Department of Justice in 1933, and it was a federal prison until 1963. During its time as a prison, some pretty famous people served time there, like George Machine Gun Kelly and Al Capone. No more than 250 prisoners were kept in the jail at one time, but it was capable of housing up to 450 prisoners in cells spanning 10 feet by 4.5 feet. Its location on an island meant that it wasn't the easiest prison to escape from, but that doesn't mean people didn't try. At least half a dozen tried to escape in 1946 after they overpowered guards and took their firearms and keys. Order was finally restored 48 hours later when the U.S. Marines came in to help. By then, 3 escapees and 2 guards had been killed. A few inmates also allegedly escaped since then, but it's not known whether they survived the bay's currents or not. Number 6. Ciudad Barrios Prison. If you had the choice of prisons to be sent to, Ciudad Barrios Prison would probably be near the bottom of your list. This prison in Ciudad Barrios, San Miguel, El Salvador, used to only house members of the Mara Salvatrucha gang. From 2004 to 2015, El Salvador's policy was to segregate gang members in the prison system, but the policy was eventually reversed. But that doesn't mean that this prison's culture has changed, and it's described as one of the most violent prisons in the country. The Army guards the prison from the outside, and it's supposed to house 800 prisoners at most. Except, instead, about 2,600 inmates are currently doing time in what is described as a fairly squalid facility. Guards are too scared to enter due to the violence, but it's now militarized, which means police officers and soldiers serve as prison guards. The inmates have free run of the facility, pretty much due to how scary they are, but they run their own bakery and even have a hospital that they staff themselves. There are also workshops set up for inmates to make furniture and toys. Number 5.
I know you fucking lying. Okay, you want me to go to a hospital run by inmates? The guards are scared of the inmates. Why am I gonna trust them in the hospital? They got trust some critical with my life? Oh, absolutely not. But why are the guards so scared? They got the military in on this? Yeah, boo. That's how many crazy people got locked up. See? Keep them locked up then.
5. Cresty Prison. Cresty Prison in St. Petersburg, Russia, used to be a detention center with 2 cross-shaped buildings containing 960 cells for a maximum of 1,150 detainees. It's no longer in use due to a more modern and larger facility being built called Cresty 2, which utilizes the same cross-shaped design. This prison dates back all the way to the 1730s when it used to be a warehouse complex. After the Emancipation Reform of 1861, there was a great need for prison space, so the warehouse was turned into a 700-bed prison. By 1964, it was primarily used for pretrial detention, and to say it was overcrowded was an understatement. By the time the 1990s rolled around, it had more than 12,500 inmates, which is insane when you think it was only designed for 1,150. Some of the cells, which were designed to hold 6 inmates, had more than 20, and they'd have to take turns sleeping on the floor and 3-level bunk beds. Eventually, Cresty Prison closed in 2006 when President Vladimir Putin announced that prisoners would be relocated to the outskirts of St. Petersburg to a new facility. Number 4. Poilot Prison.
Hold on. That jail was designed for 6 inmates in a cell. You got 20 of them? How do you decide who goes to sleep first and who doesn't? Like, what gives you proper authority? Is it whoever can take the punch? I bet you they're in a fight. No, that's not funny. That's really messed up. Like, can you imagine having a fight of whether or not you get to sleep or stay up tonight or sleep on the floor? Chapo. Dirty ass prison floors.
Poilot Prison, which translates to Fiery Furnace or Hell's Hole, was a Hanoi prison for political prisoners and later U.S. prisoners of war during the Vietnam War. It was demolished in the 1990s. The French built the prison from 1886 to 1901 when Vietnam formed part of French Indochina. It was renovated in 1913 to take the capacity from 460 to 600, but it was often overcrowded, with more than 730 prisoners in 1916 and reaching more than 2,000 by 1954. During the Vietnam War, American prisoners of war sent to this prison experienced some pretty nasty conditions, including unsanitary living environments and poor food. To bring some humor to their situation, they used to call it the Hanoi Hilton. Although North Vietnamese officials maintained that their prisoners were treated well in accordance with the Geneva Conventions. In late 1969, treatment at this prison and other camps became more tolerable, and morale was greatly improved. Once the war was over, some pretty terrible stories came out about Hoa Lo, with reports of murder, broken bones, beatings, dislocated limbs, starvations, and sometimes food contaminated with animal and human feces. Medical neglect was also mentioned, especially around tropical diseases and infections. After this prison closed, it was demolished to make way for two high-rise buildings, one of which is a 25-story Somerset Grand Hanoi apartment building. Number 3.
Y'all, now explain it to me. How in the wazoo do human feces get in the food with animal feces? Somebody put their own feces in that food. That is disgusting. Prisoner or not, don't contaminate my food. Please don't. Don't.
Chateau d'If. Chateau d'If is both a fortress and former prison on the smallest island of the Frioul archipelago, known as Ile d'If. It's a little under a mile from Marseille in France and is situated on just 3 hectares of land surrounded by ocean. As far as prisons go, this one is picture perfect. The chateau is a 3-story building with 3 towers, and it was built on the orders of King Francis I in 1524, who saw the island as important for defense against sea attacks. That's probably why it was also believed to be a pretty good prison location. Its isolated location and the deadly offshore occurrence means prisoners won't be in too much of a hurry to escape, kind of like Alcatraz. It stopped being used as a prison by the end of the 19th century and opened to the public in 1890. You can reach it by boat, and because it was the setting for the novel The Count of Monte Cristo, it's quite a popular tourist attraction today. It's also been featured in many books, short stories, and a crime film called The French Connection. Number 2.
Look, if y'all notice, most of these notorious ones have all been an island. They said they put y'all asses on the island when y'all can't escape. They is sick of prisoners escaping from prison. That's what it really is. That's the real kiki.
2. The Tower of London. The Tower of London wasn't built as a prison. Instead, it was built as a symbol of royal power and a secure fortress. It housed weapons storehouses and was luxuriously furnished for important people. But it did function as a prison, and many people ended up confined to this fortress. The earliest prisoner we've learned about in history books was Ranulph Lambert, Bishop of Durham, who was found guilty of extortion in 1100. Holy crap, it's crazy as an American how far back history goes in other countries. 1100. This place was built in, let's see, well, part of it was built in the year 1078. That's insane. So anyway, Ranulph was responsible for many improvements to the original tower design and actually escaped from White Tower by climbing down a rope that someone smuggled into his cell in a wine casket. Dozens of prisoners were sent to the Tower of London over many centuries for many crimes. For example, William, Count of Mortain, was sent there in 1106 as a prisoner of war, and Jean de Courcy spent time there in 1199 for rebellion in Ireland. Richard II of England also used it as a refuge in 1399 from rebels before he was taken to Pontefract Castle and murdered. The last person to be executed in the tower was a Nazi spy, Joseph Jacobs, who was shot in 1941 by a firing squad. And the last people to be held there were the Cray twins, who spent a few days there in the 1950s for failing to report for national service. Number 1.
Yeah, I apologize. This ring like keep going off and on me. Because I think the battery going dead. Anywho, we're going to talk in the dark for a little bit. That's crazy. Okay, so the way of killing that man was by a firing squad. In other words, they shot his ass to death. What? That's a pain. What happened to lethal injection? The electric chair. Well, electric probably didn't work either. But you know what I'm saying? Lethal injection was painful.
Number 1. Security Prison 21. It's hard not to feel a shiver up your spine when you explore the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. It's the same location where Security Prison 21, also known as S21, used to operate. This prison consisted of 4 buildings, which used to be part of an old Tuol Save prey school before being used for interrogation, torture, and execution between 1975 and 1979. The A building has areas once used as torture rooms, while the B, C, and D buildings were all used as cells. In the B buildings, you'll also see photos of victims, while you'll get to see some of the last words of victims and perpetrators in Building D. And that's not even the worst part. The bodies of over a dozen people have been found in graves in the backyard. This place was as awful as they come. Movies show prisons to be these
In the backyard, girl. But they just kill even throw their asses back there. Y'all, there we go. I'm not sure. Yo, so what y'all tell me about that? There's more prison ones to go. We got a couple more things to get to, but that's the end of that video, y'all. And I want to know y'all opinions because I've been kind of quiet, still the reactions because I'm trying to get, see what's going on. But Lord, what y'all think about these prisons? Yeah, that first one was real nice though. Really, really nice. Real nice. Okay, this next one, y'all, is about how they escaped from prison. Okay, y'all, this is crazy. The way they escaped. Talking about some powerful people.
4 men who broke out of an Ohio jail. They were considered very dangerous.
These men are considered armed. Hundreds of officers on a massive manhunt.
They are killers. They are murderers.
From digging underground tunnels.
Beneath it, a tunnel that was his highway to freedom.
To helicopter getaways.
It was a spectacular escape that made headlines around the world.
And even mailing yourself to freedom. These are the most daring prison escapes in history. Some had help on the outside, while others took months or even years of careful planning. But how did they do it? Welcome to Explained. Let's start with the escape of Richard Lee McNair. McNair was raised by a police officer and was a highly intelligent man. But in 1987, he earned himself 2 life sentences and an additional 30 years for burglary at North Dakota State Penitentiary. McNair made his first escape attempt through a ventilation pipe in 1992, but was recaptured a year later. However, his attempt to escape from a maximum security federal prison in Louisiana in April 2006 earned him a name in history. McNair's prison job was to repair torn mail bags, and here's where he cooked up the perfect escape plan. He built a makeshift escape pod using some of the materials around him and fitted it with a breathing tube. One day, McNair hid inside the pod amongst some mail bags on a forklift. He knew the pile was due to be taken to a warehouse outside the prison. Once he heard the warehouse staff leave for lunch, he got out and made a run for it. A police officer stopped him jogging beside the railroad tracks, and McNair actually managed to convince the cop that he wasn't who they were looking for despite not having any ID.
Do you have any form of identification on you? No, man. What's your name?
Robert Jones.
What's your address?
I don't have an address. I'm at the hotel. We're working on houses and stuff like that, the roofing.
What is? We got an escapee.
Oh, where from?
Prison. Hey, this is Carl. Subject wear glasses? Nothing about glasses. How old is your guy? You're how old?
50. Born 56.
Let me just verify. He says his brother's staying at the motel. Let me verify that. You know the bad thing about it? You're matching up to him.
Come on. We just got into town about a week ago, and he dropped me off to jog. I always jog about 12 miles a day.
I'm just doing my job, man.
I know you are.
If you do jog again in the future, carry some ID with you. Be careful, buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
Next is Joaquin Guzman.
You tell me he outsmarted the police. Yo, we employ some dumbass cops in the U.S. I'm sorry. Some of them are very intelligent, but that man, oh, Lord, he put a wool over his eyes.
Better known as El Chapo. El Chapo is the founder of the Sinaloa cartel and one of the most terrifying drug lords on the planet. El Chapo was first captured in 1993 and sent to Puente Grande prison. But despite being behind bars in a maximum security facility, he continued to
Moose, he just walked away. You see that? He got in a mail bag. They took him in the mail room. They went to break. He bolted out and ran out. He got. I don't know if they ever found him.
manage his drug operations with ease. It was obvious that his connections were vast, and the threat of a cartel retaliation was enough to scare many
He got
guards
away,
into
I guess.
compliance. In 2001, El Chapo's men bribed a guard to let him out of his cell and helped him escape in a laundry cart. Then he was wheeled to a parking lot where he got into the trunk of the car and escaped. But his greatest escape was yet to come. After being sent to Altiplano Federal Prison in February 2014, El Chapo simply vanished from his cell in July. Security footage showed him pacing his cell, and then this happened.
He sits down, appearing to remove his sandals, and then he vanishes.
Authorities discovered a 2-foot square hole beneath one of the showers. This led into a secret tunnel that the cartel had been digging for months.
Opening the tunnel up to the press, the authorities show a well-resourced operation with electricity, an air supply, and this makeshift minecart adapted from a motorcycle, presumably used to move earth and people along its rails.
This tunnel led to a cinder block house on the outside of the prison, and from here, El Chapo made his getaway. Up next, Richard.
Wow. Can y'all imagine the manpower, the time, the muscle? How did anybody not hear all that going on under the prison? They basically tunneled his way out. That's it.
Matt and David Sweat. Sweat began serving a life sentence in 2002, while Matt received 25 years to life in prison in 2008. They met at a shared workstation at Clinton Correctional Facility and began planning their escape. First, they requested to be transferred to cells next to each other. Then, they bribed a correctional officer named Gene Palmer and made another named Joyce Mitchell fall in love with them. The two officers ended up giving them small things like hacksaws, chisels, and lights wrapped in hamburger meat. And using those tools, Matt and Sweat spent months digging holes in their cells.
By February, he has methodically cut through the steel wall of his cell, 3/8 of an inch thick, and continues carving through the wall of his next-door neighbor, too.
Then they made their way down 4 stories and broke into a steam pipe, which led to a manhole just outside the prison walls.
Sweat was down there multiple nights, and he did most of the work. And they cut through the pipes. They were just persistent.
If you've enjoyed the video so far and want to see more of these, hit that like button and subscribe to explain. This next escape by
These mugs, look, they could listen. You talking about some smart people. How do you get the prison to move you in the same cell or side by side each other? Then you get these two females who are both vulnerable. You convince them to like lose their job basically by bringing you all this supply and stuff to cut your way out for what? And they did it. They must have some good wayward words.
by Pascal
Had a good way of
Payette feels
words.
straight out of a movie. Pascal Payette was a French criminal who was sentenced to 30 years in prison. In 2001, he escaped Louis prison after his friend on the outside got hold of a helicopter, flew it to the prison roof, and broke him out.
Espectacular.
2 years later, Payette managed to break out 3 more prisoners using the same strategy. Eventually, he got caught, and this time, the authorities played it safe and decided to move him to different prisons every 3 months. But in 2007, Payette escaped a second time using, you guessed it, a helicopter. During a Bastille Day celebration, Payette's men on the outside hijacked a helicopter from an airport near Cannes and took the pilot hostage. They landed on the prison roof at the start of the night shift, and in 5 minutes, the men used heavy machinery to break open 2 doors at the isolation ward where he was held. Although Payette was captured a few months later, he still holds the record for the most number of prison escapes by helicopter. Next is
Listen, you gotta be a bad mo scooter to get your friends to get a helicopter to luxury break your butt out of a prison. That's going out in style right there.
Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, and Frank Morris. Morris and the Anglin brothers were prisoners at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in the 1960s. Alcatraz was refortified in the 1930s and crowned the world's most secure prison. In fact, there were 13 failed attempts between 1934 and 1961, but this was soon about to change. The plan took months of preparation and was led by Frank Morris, but he needed help, so he roped in the Anglin brothers and a car thief named Alan West. The men stole spoons and saw blades, and every night over 6 months, they used these tools to enlarge the ventilation ducts in their cells while Morris played his accordion to cover the noise.
They literally drill small holes around the existing vent and then push that concrete in.
The ducts led to a utility tunnel where they stored an inflatable raft made of raincoats. They even made fake heads from scraps of paper and waste materials. On June 11th, 1962, the team put the fake heads on their pillows and made their escape through the utility tunnel. But West got left behind after his cell grill got stuck. The trio took the raft, slid down a pipe from the prison roof, and snuck to the shore where they disappeared.
That legendary escape is still one of the greatest mysteries in American history.
Last is the ingenious escape of Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank,
Look, so I don't care how tough, how maximum security these prisons are, there is always a way and somebody to figure it out. These were only the guys did. Yeah, the only guys that escaped from Alcatraz. But think about it, there's always a way out. It just takes one person. Frank
Abagnale spent his early adulthood forging checks. He was also a master at impersonation and managed to pass off as a pilot, a university professor, and a doctor.
Well, as the pediatrician, probably, it was really ended up being the most easiest, which should have been the most difficult. I supervised 7 interns on the midnight to 8 shift. When I would be called to the emergency room, I'd walk in, there'd be 2 or 3 interns there, and I'd be called down, and I'd walk in, and I'd say, "What's the problem?" And they'd say, "Doctor, we have a severe incardio here with I didn't know if the guy broke his leg, had a heart attack. So I would say, "Well, Dr. Carter, what do you think?" "Well, doctor, I would like to administer 30 cc's of this." "Dr. John, I concur." "Dr. Jane, I concur." "Gentlemen, have at it." And out I would go. Well, I became one of the most respected residents because I was the only one that ever allowed them to do anything without any.
When he got caught, Abagnale was sentenced to 12 years and sent to the Federal Detention Center in Atlanta. Now, this was the early 70s, and it was a time when prisons were being heavily scrutinized by congressional committees. So when the U.S. Marshal forgot to bring along Abagnale's detention commitment papers, the prison guards suspected he was a prison inspector under contract by the FBI. Once Abagnale realized this, he decided to use the lack of documentation to his advantage. He got in touch with his friend Gene Sebring, who helped him create the fake credentials he needed. Sebring created 2 fake business cards for Abagnale. One showed him as a prison inspector, and the other was of an FBI agent he pretended to know. One day, Frank pretended to reveal his fake identity as a prison inspector to the guards. And he actually convinced them to let him leave the prison in a car to meet his fake FBI partner, who was actually Gene Sebring. And that's how he managed to escape right under their noses.
Wow.
There have been other famous international...
He escaped under their own stupidity. Wow, that's crazy.
Prison escapes over the years. This includes John Dillinger's getaway with a fake wooden gun, the Texas 7 who got away in a maintenance truck, and Choi Gap-Buck who escaped a South Korean prison through a food slot in the door. Are there any other unbelievable prison escapes that you know that we didn't?
Wait, that man's so damn skinny. He crawled through the mill door, butt ass naked. Lord. What's going on with this ring light? She don't want to give. There we go. She just getting on my nerves, damn ring light. Anywho, so the next one is 5 reactions of let me see. Convicts set free, excuse me. So these are people who've been falsely arrested, accused, and finally set free. This happens a lot. It happens a lot, especially in the U.S. I don't know about other countries, but the U.S. happens a lot. Let's see.
2004, when the Honduran immigrant was accused of killing 2 women.
A man who was sentenced to die literally was on death row.
So it's the case of this guy named Clemente Aguirre. And if I tell you this story, you'll say, you got to be making up. It can't be true.
14 years, 4 months, and 19 days. I've been incarcerated. 10 years, 3 months of them in death row.
On June 25, 2004, in Altamonte, Florida, 24-year-old Clemente was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and burglary, a crime that he did not commit.
From the start, Aguirre Harkin said he found the women dead, that he tried to help, and that's how their blood got on his clothes and his footprints.
It was a gruesome crime that found his neighbors, 68-year-old Carol Barris and 47-year-old Cheryl Williams, stabbed to death.
I didn't do it. I don't kill nobody.
However, despite Clemente protesting his innocence, police decided he was the only possible suspect, and he was sentenced to death. In the 14 years on death row, Clemente never stopped trying to clear his name, and he wasn't wrong either. As it turns out, Samantha, Cheryl's daughter, prior to the murder, was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder.
Within inches of the mother's body and in a bathroom where the state argued the killer cleaned up is the daughter's blood, a trail of the daughter's blood going to the bathroom, and then the mother's blood on the outside of the daughter's window. And there's in the doctor's notes, a few years before this happened, where she says to her mother, "I'm going to kill you if I ever get out of here. I'll kill all of you." Then we find out that she has confessed all over town. We had people coming in all over the place, testifying, affidavits that she said, "I killed my mother and my grandmother. I'll do it to you."
With such irrefutable evidence implicating Cheryl's daughter, the day finally arrived for Clemente.
I do know that nobody believed me back then. No way. Besides my mother, nobody believed me. And I thank you for it. From the bottom of my heart.
He holds back tears and immediately heads towards friends and family to celebrate.
But today is a brighter day, a new day, and I got good hopes for the future.
This is the...
You know what? That's exactly what they owe me. Oh, baby, no. You lock me up and throw away the key for 10, 14 years? And you expect me to get out and be cool because I'm out now? Oh, no, baby, you're going to pay me. You're going to pay me. Oh, that's on period.
Is
Oh, no, you gonna pay
Devontae
me.
Sanford, who in 2007 was sentenced to 37 to 90 years in prison, a horrific quadruple murder that he did not commit. He was only 14 years old at the time. Devontae was walking outside his home in his pajamas when he was arrested just 3 blocks away from a vicious crime scene involving 4 people and an AK-47 assault rifle.
Wow.
Devontae was taken to the local police station, where it turns out that the police coerced him into a false confession with the use of leading questions and feeding him facts from the case. To make matters worse, his lawyer at the time didn't help by convincing him to enter a guilty plea. His current lawyer had this to say.
In the course of their targeting him, they literally fabricated evidence and committed perjury in order to ensure that this young man, that they could get a conviction.
But just 3 weeks later, there was another twist in this tale. And that twist came in the form of hitman Vincent Smothers. Smothers was arrested for 12 murders, 4 of which turned out to be the case that Sanford was convicted for. The lack of action from the justice courts got the attention of the Northwestern Center of Wrongfully Convicted Youths, who pushed to reopen the case, which led to Devontae's freedom in 2016.
It was a homecoming 9 years in the making.
Interestingly enough, Devontae is thankful to one particular person for his freedom. Smothers.
He protected me, not the cops. The cops took advantage of me. It's because of this man. You know, I'm able to walk and breathe and just, you know, be at peace.
As it turns out, all that time spent wrongfully incarcerated may have taken its toll on Sanford, who found it hard acclimatizing back into regular society.
New and serious trouble for Devontae Sanford. The 25-year-old was convicted of murder here in Detroit, then exonerated and released from prison.
He was arrested for assault in 2018, and this time there was no hitman to take the heat.
See, that's what happens when you lock somebody up for that long. Institutionalization is real. Like, that stuff is real. Like, you in there with a bunch of criminals. Okay, and you have to do criminal shit to stay alive when you're in prison. I ain't never been. I'm speaking from what I hear from watch documentaries and stuff. Like no, and from people's personal experience, yeah, that can change and damage and ruin anybody's whole life.
In 1991, Queens, New York, 19-year-old Gregory Counts and 21-year-old Van Dyke Perry were sentenced to life in prison for a crime they did not commit. The victim was held at knife point out front of her Queens home, thrown into a car, and driven to Central Park, where she was then raped multiple times. She claimed that the men responsible were Counts, Perry, and a third unknown man. In 2017, after having already served 11 years, the Innocence Project reinvestigated the Counts and Perry case using DNA that was retested. DNA cleared both Counts and Perry from the semen found on the victim. It led to a man who was deceased. Weird, right? So why would the victim make up such a heinous story and send two innocent men to jail? The answer will get your blood boiling.
The complainant now admits that her boyfriend forced her to lie and falsely claim these men sexually assaulted her. Her boyfriend was trying to avoid having to pay a debt to these two men.
All that for a boyfriend avoiding debt, the things we do for money. Let's have a look as both Counts and Perry sit in court, hearing the sweet sound of freedom echoing throughout. They do their best to hold back their emotions. Although they are free and reintegrating back into society now, it's clear that this horrible, unjust story will haunt both these men for the rest of their lives.
It's never going to be over. The reason why, because it's tormenting my life and it's my past.
That's crazy that a man can go through all that. Man, that's some crazy shit right there. That is crazy. A woman would lie for her boyfriend because he owed debt. I bet you it was gambling debt or drug debt. One of the two. One of the fucking two. I'd find her when I got out. Ooh, and I'd be back in there for a reason that time. I'd be back in there for a whole good reason. Right?
1993, New Jersey. 22-year-old Tito Marino was murdered in his video store. Another gruesome death by stabbing. Eric Kelly and Ralph Lee were both convicted of a crime they had no connection to. The whole story was put together by police using coercion and a sketchy eyewitness. They then used those statements against Lee, and that's how they nailed their conviction. It wasn't until once again the Innocence Project got involved in their case that Eric and Ralph felt a bit of hope.
And the state has just dug in their heels ever since. They refused to investigate this other person, refused to talk to him, didn't look into his history, and instead are just blindly clinging to this conviction at all costs.
Lee was released after 11 years. However, it wasn't until 2018, after having spent 24 years in prison, that Kelly was finally given back his freedom after new DNA evidence was presented to the judge in court.
Therefore, in light of the foregoing reasons, the motion to file a both sentence count 3 of
Interestingly enough, we find Judge Joseph Portelli in full Karen mode.
Listen to me. It's not a moment of choice, it's a moment of justice, okay? It's not something to celebrate or not celebrate.
We're not sure about you, but freedom after 24 years of wrongful incarceration seems like a pretty good reason to celebrate. Kelly and Lee didn't let this dampen their moods. Both were hungry, high in spirits, and thankful for everyone that had played a part in their release.
Mainly, I want to eat. I'm a little hungry. Be with my legal team. I want to thank them. I want to thank my family. First and foremost, it's been a long time. I just don't know. I'm just out of words right now. I'm just feeling good right now. That's all.
What would you want someone who didn't know anything about your case to know?
I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent man.
What the hell he mean ain't nothing to celebrate? That calls for a full fucking celebration. Excuse my language. For a full celebration. Like, You just been in prison for how many years? He said 20? Lord calls for a full celebration. You sit your old Karen ass up there on that.
All's
Child, you made me
well
mad.
that ends well. For now.
Right, in the case of People versus Juan Ignacio Catalan, is that your true name?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Juan Catalan, the man saved by sitcom. An alibi caught on camera, but not in the way you think. On May 13th, 2003, 16-year-old Martha Puebla, a witness in a case of a gang slaying, was shot and killed in front of her home in Sun Valley, California. It wasn't until 3 months later that the FBI arrested 24-year-old Juan Catalan during a raid in front of his family's machine shop. Juan was interrogated for hours. It seemed like they already had a huge amount of evidence against him. A witness sketch that looks like you. A witness that was supposed to take the stand against your brother gets murdered in cold blood. It doesn't look good. But Juan consistently pleads his innocence, telling officers that they're trying to pin this crime on the wrong person.
You guys are gonna take away my life for this bull. You killed somebody. Wait a minute. Those are very strong words right there. I did not kill nobody. I would never kill nobody. And I never do anything to hurt anybody. Convince us otherwise.
As things get sticky, Juan remembered that he was at a Dodgers game with his daughter on that day. But a stadium full of tens of thousands of people, what are the chances that someone captured him there? And even more so, the chances that you'd be able to retrieve said footage. Well, this is where this case becomes wild. Juan remembered he was on TV, but not the Dodgers cam. It just so happened that Larry David, the creator of Seinfeld and star of the HBO show Curb Your Enthusiasm, was shooting an episode in the exact same aisle as Catalan and his daughter.
The episode was that I picked up a hooker in the carpool lane and took her to Dodger Stadium.
What are the chances? Juan's lawyer contacted HBO, got access to the footage of that episode, and ran the tapes. Hours of research brought no results, and he was running out of tape and felt like he wasn't going to get what he needed. And then, there it was, the once-in-a-lifetime chance of an alibi caught on tape.
And I pointed at the screen, and I said, that's him, roll that back.
This footage, combined with a phone call made to his girlfriend at the exact time he was leaving the stadium, led to his case being thrown out. Both detectives were found guilty of coercion and falsifying their reports. As for Juan, what can you say? Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
From getting the tickets on the day of to being caught on camera, but what are the chances that out of 58,000 seats, they're filming on my aisle? I look at it like I did win the lottery because I got a new opportunity at life.
Y'all, what are the odds? Somebody was watching out for him. Okay, and that's a period. So Lindsay, I'm with you. There is no amount of money you can give me to give me back my life for prison. You know what I'm saying? But since I served it and I did it, you might as well rack up them checks. I bet not have to ever work a day in my life after that. You know what I'm saying? There's no way. Yeah, that's a 1 in a million. That's a 1 in a million. And that's a great story. See, I like stuff like this, y'all. This is what helps me, have high hopes, for my own life. If they can have me 3 successes, but child, pay me. Pay me. At the end of the day, you pay me. And don't pay me no pennies on the dollar, okay? And I'm gonna sue everybody involved, from the DA, the judge, the prosecutor, the corrections facility I was held at. Oh yeah, I'm suing everybody for mental abuse, damaging, losing my life. Anyway, y'all, that's what we have for today. Prison stories. So y'all know why I decided this, right? I'm preparing for Foodie when she go to prison. In Kuwait, hoping to get her luxurious prison. Anyway, if you're about me, thank y'all for being here. Again, please make sure you smash that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe. And as always, stay blessed, stay positive, stay motivated. And I'll see you guys a little bit later this evening when we do our little live stream. Bye. $20,000, that's poverty. I want $1 million a year. Quit playing with me. 20,000. Shit, that's poverty. Shit. Oh, hey, Life of Lindsay. If you missed this, I will be on live again later on. Probably 9, 10, 11, something like there. I don't know. Someone put up in there. I'll do another live stream, something else. But bye. I seen that comment from Nola, but I had to come back and say something. 20,000 a year. Girl, I wish they would play with me like that. I want to live well.